Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dal, and it looks like Blizz heard all of y'all's feedback regarding Legion Remix. I like Mr. Pandaria Remix. Many players felt like Legion version of Remix went out to PTR testing with way too many limitations. In Mop Remix, you got a bunch of bronze and a very powerful character super early on. You got a very fast leveling with dungeon spamming and raid spamming, and you could get a character to max level in an hour if you knew what you were doing. Legion Remix, on the other hand, had way slower progression, slower leveling, like much slower, lower bronze acquisition for all those unique rewards for you to collect with so many more vendors this time around, but a lot less bronze to go around. But also players felt like their character was spiking up less in power, with the artifact weapons really not matching the cloak power from Mr. Pandaria. So Blizzard listened to a lot of the feedback and have promised to update Legion Remix with this week's PTR build, promising more fun, faster paced experience, and much more rewarding. And so far I've spent roughly 10 hours with Legion Remix, and I wanted to go over everything that is new for this content, specifically while it's in the PTR development testing. And it looks like they definitely made some headway, some significant headway when it comes to improving this experience as part of the patch 11.2.5, which for now does not have a release date, but maybe we should be getting the release date sometime soon. As always, if you guys want to see more regular updates for War Within content and even future updates like Legion Remix or potentially Midnight Alpha, be sure to follow the channel and subscribe. But otherwise, let's dive right in. If you're looking to test out Legion Remix for yourself over on the PTR, they did add a new vendor called Bronze Brandbeard, which is a brand, but as a bronze Dragonflight Time Lost Collector. He's just an NPC for PTR, so if you're looking to test it, right now they made it super easy for the next like week or couple of days here. You could basically boost your character to max level, skip some of the main storyline stuff, and then get some gear in order to get your character caught up and get started. So if you're looking to do some endgame testing, Mythic Plus content, raid content, all that, right now in the PTR, it is the easiest you can do so. This gives you the opportunity to test out all the different artifact abilities, try a bunch of spells, a bunch of traits, and see what kind of builds might end up being potentially good once this content goes live. You also basically get to skip the entire leveling experience, which leveling in Legion is fun, but it is a little bit slow, and there's also so many different quest campaigns for every single class. Like if you've never actually played during the expansion of Legion, between all of the different order hall campaigns for every single class out there, it's actually so much content to dive into. So if you're trying to save that, if you're someone who's really big into story and doing like story quests and stuff, there's a lot of content to enjoy from every single class order hall out there. But if you're trying to save a lot of that for like, you know, when the content officially goes live to enjoy and experience it at your own pace, then it's a good idea to do the brand skip, just so you can test some of the open world content, heroic world tier, which is live and actually a lot more healthier feeling, test out some of the Mythic Plus dungeons, and potentially even a few raids as well. Outside of this though, that's just going to be an NPC for testing. He is not going to be there once Legion Remix launches, whenever that's going to happen. We don't have a release date just yet, but they did a number of adjustments based on player feedback in order to make Legion Remix a lot easier and better to play through. One of the things they did is buffed up EXP rewards all across the board. They added 2 perfected epoch mementos, which is a token that increases your experience gain by 10% as part of the intro quest line. So you can get 2 of those pretty early on, which will drastically increase how much EXP you earn from the start. You will also be able to get these as you complete main storylines of each and every zone. So that's like 4 main zones for you to get through, and then Suramar, which you can start exploring at some point at high enough levels. So this should help overall feel and increase the pacing of how fast you're getting through Legion Remix significantly. But then they also added 2 more of those mementos, which also each provided 10% XP bonus on top of it, one for reaching level 40 on a character and another for reaching level 80. Also, they increased the rate at which you gain epic mementos, the smaller version, which is just a 1% bonus per infinite research quest. So you'll get a lot more of those as you do weekly and daily activities within Legion Remix. And even level 70 players will now gain more RT's infinite wisdom buff, which will increase your EXP gains by 250% for that character. And this was primarily a problem in Mr. Pandaria Remix because the last few levels were not really tuned in terms of EXP, while the whole Mr. Pandaria leveling was really designed for like, I think it was level 90, but with the level squish it came down to like level 60. So that last 60 to 70 was really lengthy. So they're trying to curtail that as early as possible so that 70 to 80, the last 10 levels, should hopefully feel a little bit better paced, especially when it comes to just doing some raid content, open world content, whatever it takes to hit max level, because you are going to need to hit level 80 as part of Legion Remix to experience some of the highest end game gear like mythic progression, really high end M+. Some of those stuff is going to be locked to max level, so the faster we get to max level, the better. They'll also increase the XP gains you get from raid bosses, as well as from infinite research raid quests themselves. So the more of those raid quests you do and the more raids you run, the more EXP you're going to gain. And raid leveling was one of the best ways to level during Mists of Pandaria Remix. Not only was it a lot of fun to jump into raids that early, but they were also very rewarding. So it looks like they're trying to mimic that as best as they can for Legion Remix as well. They also wanted to make sure that the Heroic World tier is a good playground for bonus EXP. And this is something that I commented on before previously, how it felt like the Heroic World tier was kind of cool, the difficulty was awesome, but I felt like the amount of XP you gained for it was not really worth like turning it on. I felt like it was easier just to keep it going the normal world tier, basic, enemies don't really hit that hard. You can just get through quest to quest to quest much faster pace than having to slow down for every single enemy trash pack in the Heroic World tier. They buffed up the XP gained in Heroic World tier to 500% bonus, so that should hopefully make the Heroic World tier a much more rewarding of an experience, because it's a lot of fun just on the challenge alone, but it just felt like it slowed down your experience by so much that it wasn't worth it. And hopefully this time around, it'll make it a much better experience for players looking for a challenge, yet something that is still worth your time when it comes to leveling a new character. Speaking about things that are more worth your time, and that is going to be rewards, which have been buffed up all across the board. Essentially, your character and every one character that you level are going to gain more bronze and epic mementos, which are used for, buffing up your weapon, from raid bosses specifically. Raid bosses will now also drop fragmented mementos of epoch challenges based on difficulty, and that is something we actually started to collect pretty early on. Get quite a bit of these from Mythic Plus dungeons, but also even rares and open world enemies in Heroic World tier can drop these. And once you can combine 100 of these, you can gain a significant amount of infinite power and stamina to add to your character, gaining a fairly large bonus to your overall weapon effectiveness. But also, this is going to be the item you're going to be using in order to really try to juice up your character to become more powerful than ever as part of the Legion Remix, to really make a broken character, which is another thing they really want to try to give players more of opportunity to do so. You also will have a much better opportunity to gain empowered rewards from empowered enemies in Heroic World tier, as they now have a chance to drop a Thorn of Dream. Thorn of Dream is going to be an item during the first phase of Legion Remix that allows you to essentially do open world content and other challenges and create Emerald Nightmare raiding gear out of those dreams. Collecting 10 of them, which doesn't take long, can be done through quests. Rares drop a lot of them too, and you can actually collect a significant number of raid gear from open world activities and other challenge activities. So even if you're someone who doesn't raid, you can still get access to raid gear. And what they will do as the phases goes on is, during the first phase, you'll be getting the thorns to match the gear from Emerald Nightmare. As the next set of raids unlocks, they'll change the item from thorns to someone else for the next raid and the next raid. So there'll be some sort of a token that you can collect from other challenges outside of raids that will allow you to get raiding gear either way, which I think allows open world content and dungeon content and other content that isn't raiding specifically to maintain some sort of relevancy when it comes to gearing out your character, which is really good to see. It also increase significantly the rewards from Wither training. They added infinite research quests that are now offered at level 10, and basically every 10 levels you get a new set of research, and this research offers a significant gain towards XP, so you can level a character quicker, but also a guaranteed item rewards with at least one epic item in those rewards. So if you're looking to build out your character with the highest item level gear with the Legion Remix, those boxes will definitely be worth doing as early as possible. They greatly increase the bronze earned from enemies within Heroic World tier, and that is very noticeable. And they increase the drop rates of epic mementos from enemies in Heroic World tier to make that open world content a lot better and a lot more rewarding as it was, or compared to what it was before this update. Also, besides making the open world content of the Heroic World tier a little more rewarding. They did make some enemies a little bit more challenging, because when you think of the big structure of Legion Remix compared to War Within Season 3, players that are into solo content and open world content have, well, I mean the open world, dailies, world quests, weeklies, big events, special assignments, delves, which I guess in some ways count as part of that solo experience. But Legion Remix doesn't have things like delves. You have world quests and maybe like rep quests, and that's really about it. So they wanted to make sure that that heroic tier does allow players to have a little bit of a challenge. So a lot of the enemies, elites, as well as the specifically rares and rare elites, are always empowered. So they're always going to have some bonuses, but they also wanted to adjust to make sure those bonuses are not overwhelming. A lot of them, some of them in particular, like ones where they summoned a bunch of demons, it felt like they had way too big of hell bars, took forever to kill them, but now they do feel like still more threatening, but not nearly as like take it forever in terms of taking them down. They are a lot more rewarding though, and just running around killing rares is something you can do pretty easily in Legion Remix, as the rares are not like on a too long of a lockdown. You can actually keep going back and farming them as part of your open world experience. They also updated the obelisk that you'll meet and find out in the open world to make sure that those are still pretty good. They buffed a bunch of them up. The brutality obelisk now does 250% more damage, and it has a huge explosion at the end depending on how many stacks you can collect while the obelisk is active. Offering a restoration grants you 20% leech instead of like a weak heal over time, so it's much better and scales with your damage, so the harder you hit the better healing you do, which is super nice. Significantly increase the damage as well as the attention span of the imp that you summon with the offering of the Pact's Fell Trickster. So that little imp used to be kind of useless, not anymore. An offering of the void can now trigger from any ability, not just critical strikes, deals 100% more damage and has a much larger radius. So those offerings that are supposed to be like a significant gain while doing open world activities should feel a lot more impactful overall. Also, they got some changes to combat adjustments and player and enemy scaling at the same time. So they want to make sure that players have an opportunity to make a broken character. And one of those things is initially they put a lot of limitations on just how strong you can make a character, but it looks like they're going to be dialing on those back quite a bit. Like, you have the limits unbound trait within your artifact weapon. Once you complete it fully, like once you select which tree or which abilities of the artifact weapon tree you're looking to invest into, whether you're looking for like the Fel, Arcane, Storm, the Holy. Once you finish that out, any more artifact power or infinite power you gain that you keep putting into your weapon will go into a specific node that just buffs up the effectiveness of your character with stamina as well as primary stats. That trait used to have diminishing returns. Like the more points you invested into it, the weaker it got per point, but they're removing that completely. So it should have much better long-term scaling when it comes to trying to make a powerful character. Early on, however, players that are more into casual content like normal world tier questing, normal dungeons, LFR raiding, that scaling is also going to be adjusted, where players felt like they were pretty weak starting early on until they got some better gear, even at some of the entry-level gear, entry-level content. So they're trying to make that experience a little bit better for players that are just leveling a fresh character or looking for a more casual experience out of Legion Remix. So you won't really feel like you need a crazy amount of gear just to feel like moderately powerful anymore. That reduces the cost to purchase some of the artifact abilities, which is also really good. One of the useless artifact effects of Eternus' Ambition now grants you resources when you initially enter combat instead of having no combat functionality whatsoever. And they also adjusted the tuning of enemies' health and damage across all raids and dungeons, and even nerfed certain affixes like bolstering, but a lot of those are Legion affixes. Once the characters are like super juiced, I don't think we're really going to feel them. But overall, it is right now, in the current state, very possible to do like a +10 keystone dungeons without a healer, depending on the classes, depending on the build. I think maybe it's because we had a bunch of demon hunters in our group, but when everybody played super tanky defensive accessories like neck, rings, trinkets, everybody felt like they were survivable. And in our current gear with some of the other players on PTR, I did find that all of us had pretty good survivability just to do +10s blasting through the content. Not every boss was a pushover. Like any boss with an actual mechanic and ability, you do have to press the defensive for those or avoid them if you could help it. But it is actually technically possible just to sprint through +10 keystones without a single healer, and that is a powerful experience. Normally they put so many restraints on Legion Remix early on, so you didn't really feel like it could be game breaking just yet, but it looks like with some of these adjustments, you can already start doing some really cheesy things in order to farm up gear and currencies and power. And I'm sure players will find the most like efficient ways of spamming like Mythic Plus keystones and other content with some of the wackiest team compositions out there. Finally, there's also a bunch of bug fixes. They fixed several numbers of bugs within a certain enemy mechanics or abilities or affixes, but there's still more things to be fixed. Like every time I switch over to my Demon Hunter, anytime I log on, log off, and log back on, I lose the ability of Immolation Aura, and I need to go talk to an NPC to relearn it, but there's no Demon Hunter NPC that can teach you abilities since they are automatically learned by players. Instead, I have to switch over to Vengeance, then back to Havoc to relearn the ability. And apparently I'm not the only one. There's also an opportunity where sometimes you would get like double the affixes and double the affix spawns in Mythic Plus dungeons, which maybe is intentional but doesn't feel like it. I don't think there's any tooltip that basically means that you'll get double the affixes sometimes, but we kept getting that in Maw of Souls, for instance, and a couple other bug fixes there. We're going to have access to Legion Remix for only like a handful of days because they're doing a really short test this week for it. I think just to make sure that we don't blaze through the content too quickly, so there's still, something to look forward to once the content comes out to live realms. But it is a little bit more stable. It does feel a little bit better, but I still think they could do a couple adjustments. One, bronze increases. I've heard a lot from the community saying that they still think it should be increased to be a little bit higher, and I kind of agree with that. I feel like that, as well as EXP rates, should also be increased a little, and the infinite power for the artifact weapon scaling acquisition should also be increased, or the actual points needed for each skills to be made a little cheaper. Like either one of those two works, honestly, but at least it's good to see that they did increase the reward structure. Overall XP rates are a little higher, overall characters do feel stronger, so at least they're listening to the community. I still think they could do a little bit more in all those departments, but still we did see a pretty big improvement this week compared to previous weeks of Legion Remix, and hopefully they'll keep that in that same direction going forward by the time this content is officially released, whatever 11.25 eventually comes out. But with that, as always, I do want to thank all of you guys so much for watching, and hope you guys did enjoy the video. If you did enjoy it or found it informative, go ahead and give this video a like, as I would very much appreciate that. Also, be sure to join our Discord community, especially if you want to keep up with any new updates regarding Legion Remix or potentially Midnight Alpha, which we should hopefully be hearing something about it very soon. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, and as always, I'll see all of you guys in our next one.